So when I was about 2 years old, I had began to notice that my mom wasn't around, or there were bouts of absence. And he was acting as mother and father, working full time. I remember the daycare we were in. That lady was such a bitch. That's why I remember probably. I just hated going there. I was so young, didn't really understand why we were there all the time. And then my mom came back, and that was the final time that she left. She never left again, and she's been on the path of healing for about 23 years now. That's something growing up that I always looked up to her, because it was something that I realized it took so much strength for her to get through. And as I got older, she became more open with me about her diseases and the demons that she had. She was honest with me. She shared with me her flaws. And I always admired her for her honesty and her humbleness to admit that she was an imperfect person, just trying to do the best she could day by day. So, as I was getting older, my mom and I actually didn't get along, even though I was appreciative of her honesty. And I was really terrible to her, the way that I treated her. We fought a lot. I never really understood why. I never really understood why I treated her in such a terrible way and why we always fought. But I had my dad, and my dad was my best friend. We would go to hockey games together. We had a really good friendship. He gave me my first beer when I was 15. I thought I was so cool. And he eventually opened up about some of his struggles. And what he told me was that because of my mom's disease, is that he was seeking support from other families and spouses who were going through the similar issues that my family was going through. And that all became unraveled when I went to college my freshman year. My dad's secret, his own addiction, came to light. My mom knew about this, but as children, they thought they had to protect us from this. But now we were at an age where there was no way that they could hide it anymore. And it was my dad's responsibility to share with us what his real struggles were. Now, this was the first time that I really saw my parents struggle in their marriage, but I was still confident that they were going to pull through. And there are certain behaviors that I would see my dad partake in that were just shocking. For example, when I was in college, we would meet for hockey games, because I lived not far from the stadium, and he would drive up. And we would meet for dinner. I'll never forget this. Our waitress came up to the table, and he said, "Hey, honey, what's your name?" She said, "I'm Amber." He said, "Amber? It sounds like a stripper's name." And she laughed, he laughed. I was horrified, and she walked away. And this was one of the first times that I really stood up to my father in a way that I hadn't before, and I will never forget. I looked at him, and I never cursed at my parents either, but I said, "What the fuck is wrong with you to think that you can speak to someone like that?" This is verbatim. She laughed. Of course she laughed. This is her job. What is she going to do? Pour a drink over your head like I want to do right now? And I remember I felt that I had to tell my mom about what I had seen. Because if he was doing this in front of his daughter, what was he doing when I wasn't there? I knew he was angry with me for, telling on him, but he never said a word to me. Not a word. He never showed his anger. He never asked me why. He never even asked. It was just left there. Everything unsaid. So fast forward to me graduating college. My parents are still together. And in October 2017, again, his addiction, it unraveled. But not just for me, for also my mom. And there were things that we all learned as a family that my dad had never shared with us. So we were all shocked, disgusted, disappointed, confused as to why there had never been any sort of honesty or truth, especially growing up with a mom who was the total opposite, who told me every flaw that she had, every struggle that she went through. And I just remember that phone call in October. I'd never heard my mom so panicked. She was always so calm and cool and collected. Because of this, she would call me. She didn't really have a lot of people to talk to because it was a very embarrassing and shameful subject for my whole family. So I was her go-to. We would speak a lot, and she would share a lot, sometimes too much, where it was too much to handle, or I wasn't sure if these were things that I wanted to know about my dad. And during this time, I was beginning my own relationship. And I was beginning my own first relationship. I had never been in a relationship before. So we would share, we would give each other advice, but we weren't really listening. We weren't listening to ourselves. Fast forward, about 1.5 years goes by, after all of our talking and crying and not doing anything about it. She would tell me about things like, my mom is an investigator. Let me just put that out there. She saved me from a lot of situations as a child because she investigated. And she did the same with my dad. So she would investigate and she would catch him in lies, but he would never admit to them. And we both found ourselves in situations where we had partners who took advantage of our empathy and our willingness to let go. And they weaponized our guilty conscience against us to make us feel crazy. How could you even doubt me? How could you even dare to doubt my honesty? We both knew that we wanted a way out, but we felt stuck. And this is where we finally saw a resemblance or a parallel path that we were both walking down at the same time. And I'm still her daughter, so as a child, it's a very strange feeling to know that you're going through the same thing that your mother is going through. But at the same time, we found strength in each other's experiences. Because of these understandings that we began to develop, I soon developed an appreciation for my mom that I never had. She wasn't this monster that I made her out to be when I was young. She was just being a fucking parent. She was just there when I needed her. She was there to pick me up, this is something only her and I have recently begun to talk about openly because as a child it was very embarrassing and shameful for me. When I was younger, I was 12 at the time and I was catfished and almost kidnapped by an older man. I didn't know at the time. And it wasn't until she took me to the police station for questioning that I realized that this wasn't the person who I was talking to. And again, I never heard a word to this day from my father about that whole situation, not a word. So that is my first step of letting go. Letting go of the role that I thought my father played in my life. his physical presence means absolutely nothing because he wasn't actually there. He never had the tough conversations. He never asked me if I was okay. He never asked me how I felt after coming home, being interrogated by the police. He never asked. He never acknowledged. I don't know why. I do know why, but it doesn't make up for it. He just couldn't be there. He was dealing with his own disease in such a horrible way that it didn't allow him to be honest or to be there for his family. And within the last year, my mom and I realized just how parallel our paths would become. And that's with me realizing my own struggles with my own diseases, and how I cope with these diseases are so similar to how my mom dealt with her demons when she was my age, and how she's dealing with her diseases now. I began discovering my own powerlessness over these diseases, and that I didn't have control. And I had to let go of the idea of where I thought my life would be at this age, of the handle that I would have on my life at this age. When I shared this with my mom, she was proud, but she told me that she was scared because she's been through this and she knows what's coming next for me. Now, I'm not naive, and I know that what's coming next is going to be some of the most difficult things that I've ever had to push through. But I told her what a beautiful opportunity this is for you and me as mother and daughter to really understand each other in a way that we never have before. Now that I am 25, and she was around 26 when her issues really became heavy, I've never understood my mom more than I do to this day because of some of the issues that I'm dealing with now. And I told her that it's important for me, that I want to draw strength from our shared experience. And I have someone in my life who's courageous, who's humble enough to admit their flaws, and who's strong enough to get through them. And that person, luckily for me, just happens to be my mom, who I have a good relationship with. Now, there really is no ending to my story because I'm currently in the bullshit, dealing with all of these things. So I had to let go of the idea that holding on and working through and making things work makes you strong. I also had to learn that letting go is a really strong quality to have in someone. Learning how to let go and when to let go. But the one thing that I'm not going to let go of, and that gives me strength in all the work that I'm doing and all the pieces that I'm putting back together, it's giving me the power to say, this is not how my story will end.